Hey, this is the 5th episode of Saeki House, and I'm Griffin.
I'm Joe. We're back after like a 2-year hiatus.
Yeah, 2 years.
Of fucking not doing this shit, but we had time. And we have 2 movies to talk about.
2?
2, yeah.
Oh, we're gonna talk about... Okay.
Yeah, whether or not they're good is up for debate.
Which is a shame on one part, and then I don't care about the other one.
I don't give a fuck on the other part. Do you want to do... Okay, so the other night we watched Infection. This is a 2004 film directed by Masayuki Ochiai. It's like 4 fucking years later, and I still feel like I'm mispronouncing that guy's name. I'm just butchering it. And the recent Grudge film directed by Nicholas Pesh. Infection is fresher in my mind. So you want to do that one first?
Yeah.
Because we saw The Grudge weeks ago on opening night.
And I'm fine with doing that first. There is a vague connection. Not vague connection.
And we didn't even plan that.
No, I didn't think about it until you reminded me.
What are you talking about? The connection between the director Masayuki and
The Grudge.
Yeah. Okay. So we have previously discussed one of Ochiai's films before on Pretentious Freaks, which is a very old podcast. Which I looked it up when we reviewed his film Ju-on Final Curse. That was like 4, almost 5 years ago.
Whoa.
I looked that up today, and I was very taken aback by that and a little saddened that it was that long ago.
Yeah.
And I tried listening to it, and I couldn't. It was terrible. So this director, Masayuki Ochiai, has dabbled in Ju-on.
And then that's where the connections end.
Yes. Ju-on has been since rebooted into the recent Grudge film that no one likes but us.
Right. Well, like in some aspects.
We'll get there.
Yeah,
we'll get into it.
Infection itself is another Japanese horror movie that it seems like a lot of people enjoy.
Like a fair amount. A little bit of background on the film. It is the first entry in the 6-film series J-Horror Theater. It came out in 2004, and basically J-Horror Theater is an anthology of films all produced by Takashige Ichise, who's the original producer on the original Ringu and Ju-on films. And after the success of those, he went and asked 6 different directors to make a horror film released under this J-Horror Theater umbrella, and Infection is the first.
Oh, okay.
The rest of the series includes Premonition, Reincarnation, Retribution, Kaidan, and Kyofu, of which I've seen half of those.
Right, and I've seen Reincarnation.
Yeah.
Which I thoroughly enjoy.
I really like Reincarnation. I really do not like Infection.
Oh, Infection's bad.
Okay, yeah, spoiler alert, Infection sucks. I don't even know how I want to start talking about it.
I mean, baseline, it is a Japanese horror movie that is set in a hospital. And it is entirely centered around the idea of these lives of a few doctors and nurses and a fucked up night that happens to them.
Yeah, it's weird. The film starts with like, it establishes the hospital's busy, it's overworked, they're underfunded, they have too many patients and not enough staff on hand. And then like 30 minutes into the movie, the hospital, it's nighttime, and all of a sudden all the patients and staff disappears except for like the 5-6 main characters.
Right, which is
really weird and inconsistent.
I think something that's ironic about the movie saying that there's not enough staff is that there's too many characters.
And they're all blank slates too.
Oh.
Except for the nurse who is nervous about, being young and being a nurse and not doing her job well, which we later found out was 2 characters.
Right.
It was very confusing.
And, we could be racist. Maybe that's it.
I hope not. I really hope not. I almost want to watch it again and just be like... Because we found this out after finishing the movie that it was 2 different characters.
No, we didn't find out. We found out in the last 5 minutes of the movie that there were 2 different characters.
You're right.
Because one was dead and the other one was alive. And you're like, wait, what?
I really want to go back and make sure that it's not like the movie trying to fuck with you or something, because I genuinely did not know that there were 2 young, nervous nurses in this film.
Yeah.
I've never had a moment like that where I just completely did not realize that there was another character in a movie that I was watching.
Well,
that I just
briefly you
pick
did in
up on.
Thirst.
That's a old joke. So Infection is a stupid film for several reasons. One of which being, I don't know what it's about. I walked away from it not knowing what it wanted to say or what really happened or just what the general concept was.
From the start of the movie, you kind of assume that something bad's going to happen due to negligence.
Yeah.
Because there's a few doctors that are just kind of shitty in it, and a few nurses that are just kind of shitty to their patients. And then it kind of drops that and becomes this other thing, and then it tries to come back to the idea of negligence.
Well, it was weird. Okay, so, like, spoiler territory, I don't really give a shit, but, you know, so the film starts to go, or I guess the conflict of the film happens when they're trying to resuscitate one of their patients whose heart is failing, and they accidentally inject the wrong chemical into his body and kill him. And you think that's where the conflict starts, but then it kind of doesn't. Like, they end up having to deal with a whole different dead body that wasn't related before. And why weren't those two things combined? Why was it not just one dead guy that they were dealing with?
From the get-go, you assume that it is, from the title, you think that it's something to do with a virus, something zombie-related, or whatever. And then it seems like after they accidentally kill this patient, you assume that it's going to be something about a ghost, something spiritual, supernatural, whatever. And then it goes back to the idea of a corpse and a virus, disease, infection being spread around and causing turmoil to all the doctors and the nurses.
Which sounds like a great idea for a movie. I would love to see a movie about, like, a mysterious body horror virus run rampant in a hospital on lockdown.
Which is what I assume.
Which is what I thought it was going to be. It's a great fucking idea for a movie. And I feel like I'm not confused by this movie because I'm a moron, because I'm used to a lot of, we're used to watching a lot of Japanese films that have unconventional narratives and fake outs and layers and things, so it's like, this isn't uncommon territory. It's just by the time the film ends, it just doesn't make sense.
Right, and I think we're also accustomed to bad Asian horror movies as well, because we've
watched a lot of crap.
We've seen a lot of them, and more often than not, we can understand the plot or what they're trying to convey. With Infection, I never got any.
Yeah, well,
I never saw any point to it.
It's like what I was saying right before we started this. I usually don't have a hard time talking about bad movies, because you can usually talk about, usually come away from a bad movie with something to say on how to improve it or like what didn't work. And Infection just is, first of all, it's flat out boring.
Yeah. There's no sense of urgency with any of the characters on the situations where they're like chasing after this monster creature or diseased man that got away somehow, but everyone's walking and really calm, and then like 6 of the other main characters don't know anything about what happened, and you're just asking why.
It's painfully underacted.
Yeah.
Everybody is just like sleeping through this movie, and it's an ensemble cast of like 6 people. It's also not scary.
No, it's not.
The parts where the movie actively wants to scare you are the parts where people are falling to these disgusting symptoms of a mysterious virus, but it neither looks real, it's not gross enough, it doesn't happen often enough, and it's underwhelming.
Right. And I think the first scene with this body that has this infection, the second body that they find, they don't show what it looks like at all. Which they keep on talking about how revolting and disgusting it is.
And how the body keeps looking at them and smiling.
As it's disintegrating, and it's like internal organs are pouring out as they dissolve.
Yeah.
And you keep on expecting to see that, and you kind of you anticipate it, you get excited for that, like, oh, what the fuck is it gonna look like? And then it's gone.
Yeah, well, I like the withholding of the reveal of who this person is or what the body is, because, basic horror buildup. You leave it to the imagination, and what you think it is scarier than what it possibly actually could be. And then the body escapes, and they have to spend part of the movie looking for it. And you're thinking, oh, I'll see it once they find it. And then they don't. They just drop that.
Yeah, they forget that plot line completely.
Like, almost instantly. Like, 2 scenes later.
They stop finding the body, and then symptoms of it start happening to the doctors and nurses, which isn't satisfying at all, because they just completely forget about their first goal.
Well, here's my biggest issue with this film, is once the characters start falling ill to the mysterious virus, it's pretty clear, or at least I thought it was pretty clear, that it was going to end up being something psychological, and it, wasn't actually happening. This was all like a weird dream or like a vision, which is dumb because I feel like if you're going to do body horror well, you have to stick to it. You can't pretend to be a smart movie by pulling the rug out from underneath the audience at the end and telling them that it was all psychological when there was nothing really psychological about it to begin with.
Right. It's not a smart way to do things at all.
So I guess, like, in short, it's a really boring fucking movie that tries to be 2 different things at once and doesn't meet either of those expectations.
Right, and then it constantly is trying to portray every single one of the characters at fault for their actions, and like they're deserving, guilty of whatever happens to them in the movie.
I'm just confused as to what the end game was, because it's like, it was the whole thing like a metaphor for like medical malpractice? Like, I don't understand.
Right, that's the other part that doesn't make any sense, is that nothing works well together.
Yeah.
Because there's some doctors that are especially shitty, and then there's some doctors and nurses that you're kind of like, they don't really deserve what happens to them.
Well, it's one of those movies that makes you angry because it wants you to think that it has something to say, and by the time it's over, it's like, what'd you think about that, huh? And I'm just like,
what?
I didn't think anything of it. So, like, at the end of the movie, the doctor imagined it all and he murdered everybody?
Right.
That's what I'm pretty sure is what happened.
I assume that's what.
That information is not clearly established. And then at the end of the movie, there's like a little twist at the end where the nice lady doctor who shows up in the morning and finds everybody murdered, and now she's infected. And I'm like, why? She didn't do anything wrong.
And she's infected with what? She wasn't involved with what caused
And there's still no virus, quote unquote, to begin with. So it's confusing and it's psychological, but it's also not. This movie.
It's just bad.
Fuck this movie.
And you were looking at reviews of it and people talking about it on Reddit.
I mean, they're mixed. It's a lot of
mixed?
Yeah, it's a lot of people that are like that think it's good and suspenseful, and then other people who don't understand it at all. And we're on that side of the fence. I don't think at any point, we said this while watching it, I don't think at any point a medical professional or a hospital employee had ever been consulted during the script writing process, because everything they say in this movie in regards to medicine or biology is complete bullshit.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a part where they say the virus is airborne, and then they like cling film a nurse to the bed frame, and like that's it. That's how they combat it from being airborne. They don't put on gloves when they're touching the bodies. They don't wear any kind of gas masks or suits to protect them from a so-called airborne virus. They just put like wrapping around them. And that's it. Well, that is their like precaution.
There's stupid shit too, like the whole reason they accidentally kill this guy is because the doctor asked the nurse to inject the wrong chemical. They confused sodium chlorate for sodium chloride. But even if you were a nurse, and even if the doctor misspoke, if you had any sort, I mean, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a chemist, I'm not a doctor, but like, if you had any sort of medical training at all, you would know the difference between those two things and how they affect a patient and which one is going to kill someone if you inject it into their bloodstream. It's fucking stupid.
And my assumption is that whatever that killer chemical is, whichever one it was, I don't know if it was chloride.
I think
or
it was
chlorate. Chlorate, because at the end of it, spooky ghost doctor said corrected them, saying to inject that one into him, then it killed him, obviously. If they had a chemical like that where it couldn't be injected into a human body and it would kill them, I don't think it would be readily available to inject into a syringe. Because from my knowledge, the kind of chemicals that you do inject into them are those little bottles that you then plunge a syringe into. I don't think they would have a fucking killer chemical. It's like if she went to the detergent part of it and then just sucked it out. It's like, this is what the doctor told me.
Well, it's also like they had, like, the dude's going into, like, cardiac arrest or whatever. He's dying, and they wheel this trough of equipment into the room. Why would the wrong chemical be on that?
It wasn't on that.
It wasn't?
The nurse ran out.
Oh, she had to run and go get it.
Yeah.
See, like, I don't even remember.
Again, like, if she went to the place where it has the drugs, there wouldn't be a killer chemical in there to inject into a human body.
Why are we keeping the killer chemicals with the healthy chemicals in the same spot? It's contrived.
Unless she went through so much effort to specifically get that because the doctor told her to. There's such a gap of logic that the suspension of disbelief is non-existent. Like, you cannot think
it's super
rationally.
It's super contrived.
Yeah.
You're just
You're just supposed to believe it because it's a movie.
It was like the entire movie is an excuse to have like 3 or 4 scenes where green goo leaks out of people's faces, and that's it. And it doesn't even look good.
No,
I'd
rather
no
watch
reason.
Monster Blood.
You could watch Nick at Night and get the same kind of visuals. There's no real reason to watch this movie because you're not gonna walk away with any sort of meaningful theme or message or any. There's no scares in it. It's not scary. It's underacted.
There's no suspense in it whatsoever. Everything you think that's gonna lead to something scary doesn't.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Well, it's also like when scary shit starts to go down, they start to they turn off the lights in the hospital and they turn on all these like green and red lights off to the sides of the screen to kind of like make things look scary. But it was like the hospital looked creepy enough without any of that, and now it just looks goofy when you're lighting everyone's faces with like green light bulbs.
I went to a haunted house last year, and it looked like that. I didn't see the fucking point in any of it.
I think an underfunded hospital is a scary enough setting without all the cheesy lighting tricks that they tried to pull off here.
Well, it's like in The Eye. It starts out in what seems like an extremely underfunded hospital, and it's a horrifying setting.
Yeah.
But it's not like the center of the story, and they aren't intentionally trying to make it a spooky setting. It just kind of is.
I feel like I'm a little biased because, I mean, we've watched a lot of Japanese movies that have scenes in hospitals, and they always look like creepy army barracks. I don't know if that's how it actually is.
Well, this one especially looked like it was something in a Vietnam War movie.
It looked underfunded and understaffed, and it was fine. And then they try and make it spookier, and it looks like it ends up looking like a Chuck E. Cheese hallway.
Well, it's like they close up shop for the night, like they're...
What hospital closes up shop for the night?
I
don't think hospitals turn off the lights at night.
Definitely not in, like, the visitor center.
I've definitely been in overnight hospital stays, and they definitely keep the lights on.
Yeah.
I was so confused by that when the doctor started, like, going down the hallways, turning off all the lights. I'm like, what are you doing? Your job isn't over.
We're closing up shop.
It's like...
It's 12 o'clock.
Take him someplace else.
We're gonna serve breakfast from 7 to 11 o'clock, and then it's lunchtime.
It's like, it's not a bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
Confusing.
Yeah, what a piece
Confusing,
of shit.
shitty movie.
I don't want to talk about this anymore. I'm done with Infection.
I own this movie. I'm never gonna watch it again.
Yeah.
I have no reason to ever revisit this.
You don't need to.
It's a bullshit movie. Great poster though.
The one that you don't have, though.
The Japanese poster.
You don't have the good
really
poster.
Cool. I don't care. It still exists. It's still promotion for that movie. So, I don't recommend it.
No, don't watch it. It's not worth your time or effort, and don't buy it, please.
Don't make the same mistake I did. I took one for the team.
You usually do.
Oh, I always do.
Yeah, always. I rented Shudder for myself.
That's fair. I didn't watch it with you, though. We definitely never did a podcast about it.
Because they all sucked.
So, I guess moving on?
Yeah, we can just talk about the Grudge 2020.
A few weeks ago, we went to go see The Grudge 2020 on opening night because we were the only people in America who apparently were excited to see it. And
Yep.
we were one of, 10 people in the theater?
Yeah, and then...
And everybody in there was laughing and farting through the whole thing.
Yeah, 3 people way behind us were loud and obnoxious when they came in.
I don't even care if the movie's bad. Just don't giggle throughout an entire movie.
When we saw Annabelle Creation,
Okay, alright.
we were really bad.
We were pretty bad, but to be fair, there's no to be fair.
No.
We ruined that movie.
No.
I don't want to make it seem like a piece of shit. I think I'm a pretty respectful moviegoer. I'm not who I was in high school.
Right. I think just Jupiter sending an Annabelle Creation for whatever reason,
dude.
that's when...
Jupiter that was like Mystery Science Theater for everyone who was there. People were laughing at that movie.
Yeah, that one's fine.
But so The Grudge 2020 has set a record. It hasn't set a record, but it's become the 20th movie in history to receive an F cinema score.
Yeah.
Critics hate it, and audiences hate it, and it's weird. I haven't heard one good thing about it online, really, which makes me sad because I like it. I don't hate it.
I don't hate it. I think there's a lot that it did wrong. I think more than it did right.
Not wrong. I think there's a lot of things it did that were underwhelming.
I think wrong.
Wrong?
I genuinely think wrong.
Well, okay, well, let's start there, I guess.
I think for the most part it gets a lot of the vibe and the basic idea of The Grudge correct.
Yes.
However, it spent too much time not focusing on one singular ghost.
That was my biggest problem with the movie, is that I like the idea of what they were going for, the idea of like a curse that spreads to other people and creates new Ju-ons
Right.
across the world. It's a cool idea, but Kayako is so iconic at this point that to not follow her up, even if you're going to do something different, move on from that, to not follow it up with a villain that has, there's a lack of a villain here. And that really bothered me.
I think what's really odd about that too is that it seems like the daughter ghost is actually the main villain in it.
She's supposed to be the movie's Toshio, but
they've spent more time focusing on her than the mom, which is
it's weird.
Which is really
the mother
odd.
is supposed to be the Kayako replacement, but she has like a few shots in the movie, and her ghost definitely kills people in it. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of shots in Ju-on that like linger on Kayako especially towards the end of each movie, and you kind of like have to stare at this horrible thing and like let the power of it sink in. But every single shot of the mother ghost in this movie, whose name I forget,
I don't know. I don't think
it's
she was
so quick, and every single one is a jump scare, and so she ends up not really having any presence because you never really get to see it.
And I think another part of that is I don't think she's a good actor.
Well, how would you know? Because she's barely ever on screen.
But in the first scene, I already was like, oh, you're stiff and not delivering these lines well.
Oh, I'm not gonna bag on her for not delivering her living lines correctly, because she was hired on the movie to be a ghost that doesn't speak. There's a serious lack of a villain that matches up with Kayako.
Right.
And it just made me miss Kayako. I kept hoping that the movie would be bookended with Kayako appearances, like maybe she'd show up at the end.
And that's another really weird part of it, is that it has that idea of Kayako starting the curse and then it kind of chain linking to each other home if they were to make another sequel to this, which they won't. There's no way that they're gonna greenlight a sequel to this at all.
Unfortunately, no.
So my assumption was that Kayako caused the curse for this woman, and then when she got back to the States to her home, Kayako would then kill her.
I took it under the assumption that it was she killed her family under the influence of Takeo. because she gets back home at the beginning of the movie and she hugs her family, and then the camera, closes in on her face, and she makes that, like, the Takeo murder face.
Right.
Because Takeo's the only spirit that would make you kill your own family.
Yes, but they didn't show that at all.
Right, but you never see Takeo in any of the movies. I mean, you do at the end of Ju-on 1, but, I mean, that's the climax of the film. Like, the husband earlier on in that movie gets Takeo'd.
Yeah, but you also know Takeo.
Well, here's the thing. I think the only reason you would get anything out of this movie is if you liked Ju-on to begin with. Right. And so I understand why people don't like it, because if you haven't seen The Grudge, or if you have and weren't like a fan of it, you don't get anything out of this. Because when you strip away its connections to other movies, it is pretty bare bones and doesn't really push the envelope in any.
And I think another aspect of what I was saying before, where I expected Kayako to kill her, she kills herself, which doesn't happen to Takeo. Kayako still kills Takeo. Yes. And it should have been bookended like that, where Kayako kills the main woman's ghost, and then causes that curse to
weird inconsistencies and like why is the death rattle still in this? Like, I get it's an iconic sound from this franchise, but there's no reason for any of the ghosts in this movie to be making that sound.
The husband makes sense because he broke his neck when he died.
Why does it sound exactly like Kayako?
Because it's iconic.
I guess it's, I don't know. I feel like you can't drop that sound from this franchise because it's so ingrained in its identity, but I kept questioning why this mother ghost was making this sound. It just
that one makes no sense. She stabbed herself in the throat. Yeah, but she wasn't strangled to death.
Yeah, like
Kayako was.
There's this, because the death rattle has this unique, not meaning but purpose behind it, I guess, in the original films, where it's the last sound that Kayako ever made before she died and things like that. And so to be constantly hearing it in this, I questioned it, like, every time. I was like, well, why? Because I had that prior knowledge of it. Right. And it just kind of, like, I don't know. Like, again, you can't get rid of it because it's The Grudge, but it was...
Then someone should have died
someone should have died in a similar manner,
And the weird thing is, the husband had, like, two noises. One was flies buzzing out of his mouth, and then death rattle. Like, it should have been one or the other.
That was one of the additions to this movie I liked, was the presence of flies. Yeah. Is kind of creepy, because, you hear flies buzzing, and you immediately, your mind is like, oh, rotting flesh. The best effect in this entire movie is when Andrea Riseborough's detective character walks in on the dead body in the house. It's fucking disturbing looking.
It's disgusting.
I would... I want to know how much of that was touched up with CG, or if those were, like, real maggots on that thing's face, because it looks great. And, for an R-rated Ju-on film, I think I was expecting a little... Like, I didn't want a gore fest. No. But I expected a little bit more from the gross department.
Yeah, and from the trailers, it looks like it will be. Yeah. There's some genuinely, like, disgusting visuals that you see in the trailers, and you expect that to be...
Yeah.
The main oomph of the scares.
Lin Shaye missing her fingers looks great, but it's not anything I haven't seen in this franchise before. The dead body in the living room looked awesome. Lin Shaye exploding like a water balloon was pretty fucking graphic. I thought that was cool, but other than that, those are really the only scenes in that movie that warrant an R rating. Yeah. There's no, like, swearing in this. There's no... I feel like it was more of a marketing, ploy than an actual rating of the film.
Yeah, and I think I was more disturbed by some of the shit that happened in Underwater, which is PG-13.
Which is a great movie.
Yeah,
I love that.
Really great. But that one's PG-13, and some of the gory stuff that happens in it, it's genuinely shocking. More so than I think some of the scenes in this.
Well, I mean, even outside of gore and violence, The Grudge 2020 doesn't do anything to surprise me. I appreciate that they continued on with the non-linear storytelling. Mm-hmm. I was really happy about that. I wasn't expecting them to not do that, but it was cool to see another, like, wide release movie that does that. because you don't see that often. But
Right.
the fact that, you know, the Ju-on films, the original ones, do a lot of clever things with time. Like, while, you know, they also tell their stories non-linearly, but they also loop back into themselves, and they, like, leave clues as to what's going to happen later.
Right.
And, you know, and it's weird and cyclical, and it gives this idea that the spirit is sort of all-knowing. But in this film, you never really get that. Like, they tell it non-linearly, but there's nothing clever about it. Like,
No, none at all.
It never culminates to anything.
It's really that it's trying to tell 3 linear parallel stories.
Yeah.
That kind of cross over.
Yeah.
But not enough to where it's like a cyclical
Yeah.
nature like the original movie.
Well, I spent the whole movie, you know, looking for clues of, like, what was going to happen later, like, because a lot of the, you know, each individual story in Ju-on makes predictions, you know, that you're supposed to kind of catch on to so that you can piece it together while you're watching it. But again, this movie doesn't culminate to anything. I kept waiting for, like, an ending scene that would kind of make me go, like, oh, like, even Blair Witch 2016 had that with the tape subplot, but
oh yeah,
this movie didn't. It starts and then it ends, and the whole point of it being non-linear was to just tell it non-linearly.
right. And I think there's really no point in that. I think the Witcher series, which people have complained about, and in a similar manner to the non-linear nature of the Grudge 2020, does that really well, where it has 3 different stories that are at different timelines, but you're given clues about where it is based off, like, one central one. Like, Ciri's story is the one that's furthest ahead, and you're trying to piece together of, like, when Geralt and Yennefer are trying to catch up to that story that's all the way ahead in time. And it does it really well, while, like you said in The Grudge, there's really no point in it.
Yeah, and
There's no connection, really, other than the fact that it's the same ghost.
and again, like, I appreciate that they stuck with that structure, but at the same time, I felt the movie was, like, talking down to me every time it would throw the year up on the screen. Every single segment in the film, I believe there's 3 stories that all mix into each other. Every time one starts, it throws the year up onto the screen in giant numbers. And I was like, I don't need that. I clearly know that this happened before because it's happening in the same house. Like,
Yeah.
I know what... And that's the other thing. Speaking of the house is not a character in this film.
No, it's not.
You see it from the outside a lot, but you never get a sense of the layout of the inside.
You don't even get a layout of the bottom floor, which
Nope.
is spent the most time in.
Which
is baffling.
I know where the upstairs bathroom is in relation to the staircase, and the living room off to the side, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, there's a dining room that you never really see, except for the detective walking in it to the living room. But that's the only time that you really notice.
The other Ju-on films kind of, you know, they take you on a tour of the house before shit starts to go down. Like, you see characters move through it, and they come back to locations, and, you know, they run back through it again, and then this film just kind of doesn't. It's kind of like, oh, the house.
No, I could probably give someone a tour of the Saeki house.
Yeah. I feel like I know the Saeki house like the back of my hand. I've never even been in it.
Yeah.
Like,
I know where everything is because I've seen the exact layout of it so many times.
So the Grudge is supposed to be a series of films about a vengeful ghost and a haunted house. But this movie lacks a solid villain, and then it also doesn't emphasize the house aspect.
Oh, I mean, the house is not a character whatsoever.
It's not.
It is just a house that has a ghost in it.
It looked
is not
creepy
a haunted
from the
house.
outside, I guess, sometimes.
It was too big.
Yeah.
It's like way too big.
I think a lot of that, there's a lot of appeal to the Japanese architecture of the old Saeki house from the other films. Saeki house. Yeah, like, not only do you not get a sense of the layout, but there's nothing ominous about the architecture of the house in this film.
And I very well could be that we're just two Americans looking at an American house and not really...
Yes and no, because you look at the iconic staircase from the Japanese films.
Right.
And just by the way it's structured, like, you can tell that they chose that staircase because there's multiple ways that you can place a camera around it to have a scare. There's like, you know, the fact that it curves around and then it like has that little window at the top of it, and then, you know, the little frosted glass off to the side. I just feel like there was a lot of that staircase is built that way to have opportunities to do something with it.
But with American homes, we've seen that type of home in I don't even know how many movies, and then also in real life. It's a McMansion in like the Midwest. I see that type of shit.
I like the move from suburban Japan to small town Pennsylvania was unexpected and kind of cool. It was like a little isolated place to have a movie like this happen, but again, the house is not emphasized.
No.
And it's a movie about a cursed house, and so the house should be emphasized, and that was really disappointing.
Yeah.
Beyond that, the director like definitely did his fucking homework and has like a great appreciation for what he's supposed to be building on.
Yeah, I think he did a good job of getting a lot of the basic ideas.
Yeah. I just
Not a lot of them.
hearing him talk about it in the interview, or interviews plural, he's got so many great ideas, and he understands the nature of the curse and things like that. And I loved all the little references in the film, like the repeating number 4, which is not only representative of, you know, the unlucky Japanese number 4, but also the original short film 44444, or however many fours it is. It was really nice.
Fucking phone number.
According to him, apparently the scene with Detective Muldoon in the basement with the flashlight is directly lifted from the Wii game.
What?
Yes, that is a level in the Wii game in the abandoned security office.
Oh.
Is directly lifted from that, which I thought was cool, because I was thinking that while watching the movie, because, you know, she's like pointing the flashlight around in first person in the film. And I was like, oh, it's kind of like the Wii game. And then, like, I went home, and a couple days later, I watched some interviews, and, you know, he confirmed, he was like, yeah, that's the Wii game. And I was like, sweet.
Well, nice.
That's cool, because I love that Wii game. That crappy Wii game.
Right.
I love that. I did not expect them to actually say the words Ju-on in this. That made me smile, because I haven't heard that.
That made me smile as well.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that in any of the Grudge films, including the Ju-on films. I don't think they've ever uttered the term Ju-on. And I was like, oh. I was like, that's neat.
They certainly said the Grudge in, I think, the Grudge 2 or 3.
Yeah. Oh, they said it in this film, too. They were like, that house is grudged.
Yeah.
I was like, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
I don't care.
I think it has some nice
thing.
touches. And I think it's a bummer that it shows the Saeki house, and it also shows Kayako.
Yeah.
But then it just never comes back to
Yeah.
it.
I was a little sad that the one shot of Kayako in this movie is in the trailer, because I would have appreciated.
Oh, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's the one shot that she's actually in this movie is in the trailer, and I was like, and you know, when you show it in the trailer, you're expecting to see more of her, and you know, I'm almost okay with her only being in one shot of this film, but I wish I didn't know that was the shot.
Yeah.
Had I seen that for the first time in the theater, I would have been like, there's Kayako, and it would have been this cool little, I don't know, it was a little underwhelming having already seen that shot, having it spoiled for me.
It was underwhelming for me to know that was the only time she was there.
Yeah.
Because I saw that expecting to see her again at the end of the movie.
Like I said,
to kill someone.
It would have been so much more satisfying if this movie had been bookended by Kayako appearances. I don't really mind that she wasn't in the middle of it. It was trying to move on and do something new and different. But it lacked a solid villain, and then it forgets about Kayako.
Yeah.
Which is disappointing and sad, because I really like Kayako. It's like my favorite horror movie villain ever. I appreciate the tone of the movie, despite the fact that what happens in the movie is, you know, a little underwhelming. The fact that it tries to go for this, it tries to play more like a drama, and it's kind of sad. It's a sad movie.
Yeah.
There's really not any humor. There's like one joke in the movie from what I remember, and it was kind of like a little offhanded thing. I like that it didn't fall prey to anything silly or goofy. The movie is like 100%, you know, it's sad throughout.
Yeah.
It's constantly dealing with death, and, you know.
And I think the performance from, what's her face?
Andrea Riseborough?
Andrea Riseborough, I think, is really, really solid, and I think she does a great job.
Lynn Shay killed it in this movie, too.
She did.
For how little of it she was in, the character she played, you know, it was tragic.
It was very different from what I'd seen in every other horror movie that she's been in.
Yeah.
Which is just, insidious.
The one person I would say took me out of it a couple times was Jackie Weaver, who played the assisted suicide woman. It would sometimes lead her lines in a way that almost seemed like she was making fun of her own character, and I was like, why are you...
Yeah.
It's like, I guess she's supposed to be the sweet old lady, but like, a couple times I was like, that was a silly way to say that. Is that the first take?
Someone wasn't murdered here, were they?
Yeah.
I was like, no, yeah.
I like the inclusion of a character like that in a movie like this, like an assisted suicide. I don't know what you would call them. Yeah, they're not professional. I don't know, but so a unique occupation to have in a movie like this. Mm-hmm. I normally don't see a topic like that touched on in films before, especially Ju-on. I liked the little side bit in this movie where Lin Shaye's husband is talking about how he finds the presence of ghosts in the house comforting, because it makes him hope that his wife is still going to be around when she passes. And I was like, that's really sad.
Yeah.
And then it turns out, they find out really soon after that the ghosts in the house are not nice at all, which just adds to how fucking sad that is.
Right.
So I appreciate the tone of this movie, emotionally and then also visually.
It looks nice. It looks really nice.
I mean, it's not like mind-blowing cinematography, but like I said, when we walked out of the theater, the first thing that stood out to me in this film was the color grading. Mm-hmm. I loved the contrast, and a lot of like those warm colors against all those like really grainy blacks just looked really nice. The visual style was like on point. It's exactly what I wanted out of a Ju-on reboot.
And I think when it comes to the scares as well, like a few of them were pretty well done.
Yeah, they were decent. They were mostly jump scares, but like none of them were like fake outs.
No.
So I wasn't like angry at any of them. It's just at the end of the day, none of the scares were, Ju-on was never mind-blowing to me, but it was always creative. Every single time I watch an original Ju-on film for the first time, I'm like, oh, that's really fucking cool. Like I didn't think of that. I wouldn't think to do that while writing a ghost movie. And then in this movie, you kind of like, the jump scares are fun sometimes, but you kind of see them all coming.
Well, when I try to get people to watch Ju-on 1 and 2, there's multiple sections where I'm like, oh, I'm excited that they're watching this. If I was to watch this again and bring people in that had watched all of the Grudge movies before but are wanting to watch the reboot, I don't think there'd be a single one that I'd be like, ooh, I'm excited for them to see this scare, which is disappointing because they're all pretty basic.
Where the biggest problem in this film lies, is that nothing is surprising.
Right.
Not on a story level or on a scare level. It doesn't play with your expectations. You had a great idea where if they pulled a Ju-on 2 in the scene where Andrea Riseborough's son is having her close her eyes and do the count to 5 thing, if she had opened her eyes and she was in the house,
that would have been amazing.
That would have been great. That would have been awesome. But the movie doesn't ever play with time and space like the original Ju-on films did. And so at the end of the day, what you get is a movie about stalker ghosts who never really fuck with people beyond jumping out from behind corners.
Yeah. They try to show some of that where, like, oh, they're psychologically tormenting you, but it's never in a interesting manner. They are just showing up, and that's it.
The only thing that ever sold the idea of psychological torment to me was Andrea Riseborough's performance. Her face, as this movie goes on, just regresses continuously. She's like, every time she shows up on screen again, she's like, you can tell she's just tired.
Yeah.
Like, she's so exhausted of having to deal with ghosts. And it's really was the saving grace of psychological torment that is supposed to be on display in this film. All in all, I think I said earlier, and I'll say it again for the record, like, I would put this film on the same plane in the franchise as White Ghost and Black Ghost, in the sense that it's not reinventing anything, it's not doing anything new or particularly better. It's just a nice little side story if you're already a fan.
Right.
It's a spin-off.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's already ahead of The Grudge 3.
The Grudge 3...
And that's an okay place to be.
The Grudge 3 doesn't even exist in this canon to me. I don't even count that movie. I think
but it's so fucking awful.
Oh, it's so
You
bad.
have to mention how
so
awful
bad.
it is. At least it isn't Grudge 3.
Someday I might tweet it later. I want to like put together my ranked list of all the Ju-on films, and I think White Ghost, Black Ghost, and The Grudge 2020 are all going to share a spot on that list.
Where's Grudge 2?
Grudge 2. Ooh, I don't know. I might have to think about it. I don't want anybody to quote me on that.
That one is hard to place when it comes to White Ghost.
It's hard to place for me too, because I know The Grudge 2 isn't a good movie, but it's also, you know, the last outing from Takashi Shimizu himself.
Yeah.
And it also gets brownie points solely for being all new material in a confusing timeline of remakes.
Right.
So I don't know where I would place that one, but I don't think this movie deserves the scores it's been getting.
No.
It's not. I've definitely seen worse films in the theater.
Oh yeah.
Worse
absolutely.
horror films.
Yeah.
For sure. It's not a broken movie. Like, for a movie to score that low on any sort of ranking system, it has to be broken. It has to not work. The Grudge isn't broken.
No,
it might be underwhelming depending on who you are, but it doesn't fail. It doesn't not make sense. So I don't know.
It's not Infection.
No, it's not Infection, and I feel bad because I liked it and no one else likes it except you, and then I really love the previous work of this director, Nicholas Pesh, and I hope this doesn't hurt him in any way.
Yeah.
Because his style is there in this movie. It's just not a great movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope he gets some other crack at like an original project or another franchise after this. I'm excited for what he makes. Cause
me too. I want to see what else he made.
Yeah, watch his first movie. It's great. I haven't seen his second film yet, but it's supposed to also be pretty good.
I think that's it.
That's Saeki House episode 5. Oh yeah, would you recommend The Grudge?
No.
I would recommend it only if you're a diehard Jew. If you've played the Wii game, then you're allowed to watch The Grudge. You're allowed to sit and enjoy The Grudge. But if you've seen Ju-on and you were like, I don't think you're gonna like it.
No.
But if you're a diehard weirdo freak fan like I am,
if you've seen every single fucking one of these movies,
if you've seen
Kayako versus Sadako,
it's Sadako versus Kayako.
You think I care? Because I don't like that movie.
That's the
I'd rather watch The Grudge.
That movie's good.
No,
that movie's fun.
It's not, and I can't believe we haven't talked about that.
All right, we'll be back in another. Whoa, we can do it on the next one. 2 years from now.
We could.
I was gonna say we're gonna be back in like another 2 years with another one of these.
Yep.
Whenever I get back home again, let's do another one. I'll bring the Hideshi Hino DVDs back, and we can watch all 6 of them.
Oh no.
We can talk about them, and then Sadako versus Kayako.
Okay.
Sweet.
Bye-bye.